What's up? I'm Jake. I studied biblical history at Moody Bible Institute, and today I'm out on a run at my local regional park, and I love running distance. I don't like doing short runs. I love to go, 10, 15 miles. So not crazy distance, but still distance. But while I was out on my run today, I was reminded of the story of the prophet Elijah and the way that fear of the unknown and intimidation can change the way that we trust God's plan. Because in the story in 1 Kings, Elijah slays the 450 prophets of Baal after calling down fire from heaven. But then, for some reason, once Queen Jezebel says that she's going to kill him, all of the authority and the power that he had just felt suddenly goes away. And he goes on a run. And in the Bible, it just tells us that he had been at Mount Carmel, and then that he had fled into the wilderness of Beersheba. And if you look at a map of Israel, those two places are not close to each other. Mount Carmel is very close to the north border of Israel. It's basically at the top of the country. And Beersheba is down in the wilderness, in the desert, in the south, the area that Israel would have come up into Canaan away from Egypt. And I had looked up the map, and then I had opened it up and I had looked at the distance between those two places. And I like to run for fun. I find enjoyment in going out to these beautiful places and getting to exercise. I've never had to run in fear, especially not distance in fear. But when you look it up, Elijah did run in fear. And he didn't just run away to be a little further away from Jezebel. No. Beersheba is 140 miles from Mount Carmel. That's not a small amount of distance. But he ran that distance insanely fast. And when he finally got out into the wilderness, he went to the mountain of God. And even though he had just been God's mouthpiece to the people of Israel, even though he had just called down God's fire from heaven, even though he was the last remaining of the prophets and he was bringing Israel back to God, he was still afraid. And he hid in the mountain, and God came to him. And in the story it says, while he was in the cave, there was a fire that roared across the mountain. There was an earthquake that ripped stones from the mountain's face. There was a wind that tore across the mountain and tore up the rocks. And then, after all these displays of power, it says that God wasn't in any of those. And finally it ends with a little tiny whisper in the silence. And right now, the only things I can hear are the birds chirping out in the trees. I'm out away from everything in the wilderness, just like Elijah was. But he was running for his life. And I'm running towards my life. It isn't that we as Christians face less difficulty because it's less immediate today. I think that it's something a lot different. And I think that we're faced with complacency a lot more. While Elijah had a threat to his life, it was something he could look at and immediately see, this is why I'm scared and running away. But for us today, a lot of the time, we look around and we don't see a threat. We don't see something that we're running away from. But at the same time, When we're at work, we're afraid to talk about our faith. When we're with family, we're afraid to talk about church. When we see strangers in the street, we're afraid to mention Jesus to them. And so why, at the end of that story, does Elijah leave the mountain where he's hiding for his life and go and continue the legacy by bringing the prophet Elisha to continue? Why is that the end? It's not that he was defeated, but at the same time, he doesn't get his triumphal end of the story where he goes and slays the queen and now he's the hero. Instead, his story ends much more humbly. I mean, as humbly as it can, with him being taken up to heaven in a chariot of fire. But for us, it's the same way. We can choose to stay hidden in that cave in the mountain, waiting for the fire and the earthquake and the wind to show us that God is working in our lives. Or we can choose to be still out in the wilderness, to separate ourselves from the things that distract us, and to hear the whisper of the way that God is working. And the more that I have done that, the more evident he has become in my life.